We are now on Visual Studio to put into practice the notion of loop in C#. Before starting, it is important to know that there are different types of loop in C#. Indeed, there is the while loop, the for loop, and the for each loop. These different loops will allow us to do approximately the same thing. So we will start with the while loop. We will see in another video the for and for each loop. First of all, we will create an array that will contain a list of names, for example. Thanks to the while loop, we are going to display them one by one. Creating an array is simple. Indicate the type here, names, so it will be a string type. Then add brackets, name this array tab name, for example. Then add an equal sign, add new to create an instance of the array class. We then need to put back the string tab in brackets and open braces to define the values of our array. So I will put 4 names in this array. Type Jibril in quotation marks, then add a comma. Jason in quotation marks, add a comma. Thibaut in quotation marks, add a comma, and finally Ismail in quotation marks, and don't forget the semicolon after the brackets. Now we're going to create a variable that will be used as a counter in our loop, but also to browse the array. Remember that each value of an array has an index. The first value has an index of 0, the second has an index of 1, etc. And since the counter evolves at each iteration of the loop, we will be able to retrieve each array value by putting the value of the counter in the index. It may be a bit confusing, but you will understand right away. So it's a counter, so it will be an integer variable. We will name it counter, but you can name it as you want. Generally, developers name it I, but here we're going to name it counter so it will be clear. And we're going to initialize it to 0. To continue, to create the while loop, type while, add parentheses and put the condition inside. Here, our condition is that as long as the counter is less than the number of values in the array, then you will show us each value, and once you've reached this condition, the loop will stop. How can you write this in C#? Type counter, then less than sign, then tab, which is the name of the array we want to get the value from, and put dot length. Why adding dot length? Here we are doing an operation between a number and an array. This is not possible to compare it this way. Indeed, we have to compare a number with a number. Here the dot will allow us to call a function on our array, and put the length function will allow us to retrieve the number of values in our array. So now we will compare a number with a number. If I translate this condition, it's like we are saying that as long as 0 is less than 4, since the counter is equal to 0 and the number of values in the array is equal to 4, then we will open the braces and put instructions to display each value of the array. So we need to type console.writeLine and put our array in brackets. However, it will not work because here we want to display what our array is worth, whereas we want to display each value of our array. Do you remember what we have to do to display an array value? You have to use square brackets and put the index of a value inside them. Here we want to display each array value at each iteration of the loop. For example, we can't put the index of the value 1 of the array, so 0. This index doesn't change with the loop, so it will display Jibril whenever it will be blocked on a single value. So how could we manage to increase the index in the brackets and display each array value? Well, we can simply put the counter variable in the square brackets. At the beginning of the program, the counter is equal to 0, and as the loop goes on, it will be increased by 1 to reach the condition put in the brackets in the while loop. So the index in the brackets is also increased and will display each value corresponding to its index until the end of the loop. If I run the program now, we can see that all the names of the array are displayed. To conclude, it is important to know that an error can happen very often when programming. Indeed, you might forget the incrementation of your counter inside the loop to reach the condition put in the parentheses of the while loop. This will cause what is called an infinite loop. Basically, if you forget and run your program, here we have a counter that is equal to 0, and the condition is as long as it is less than the number of values in the array, 4. You can execute the instructions. So since we never increment our counter, it will never reach it and the condition will always be considered as true and we will execute the instructions indefinitely. So be careful in the future in order to avoid errors and bugs. That's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed this video and my explanations were clear. See you in the next video to deal with other loops type.